Well, I just got home from the OpenStack Days Mountain West conference held in Salt Lake City this year. Very interesting conference, smaller than some, but larger than other OpenStack Day events that I've been to. I still think it was a very interesting event. A number of very interesting conversations, both in the hallways, great hallway track, and also the actual speakers themselves all had really interesting sessions. Luckily, they were all recorded, so we'll actually be able to go back and see both the panels that I was part of and the sessions that I was able to attend, and of course, get to see the sessions that I wasn't able to attend. There were some really interesting topics that I just was unable to because of other business concerns. But the one that I did manage to get to today, before I had to take off and beat the blizzard out of town, was looking at Hadoop on OpenStack. Really, in a sense, you could say Hadoop on virtualization, but they were looking at the technology, all the different components that might be oversubscribed in a cloud-like environment, specifically when you're looking at running Hadoop. And they looked at both a Ceph-based storage model and a local storage model. To me, this is really interesting because I actually have a customer that's looking at doing exactly this. They want to deploy Hadoop as one of their workloads. And the feedback that this engineer came up with, the the interesting thing that he found is that he basically did a Monte Carlo set of tests. He was looking at a number of different parameters, and each parameter was sort of looking at how the performance could be improved to get to near bare metal performance. And in the end, he was able to get to about 94% of equivalent bare metal hardware. And so he had bare metal machines and virtualization machines that were the exact same hardware, exact same base platform. The only difference was that in one case he was deploying virtual machines onto the hardware, in another case he was just deploying the application directly onto the base OS on the system as well. To me, the biggest gain actually came from pinning the storage, and I was unable to actually understand from him what that actually meant, what that actually turned into, and how you actually enabled that. But that almost doubled the performance of his Hadoop environment, and specifically using local storage, not remote storage. In both cases, it was spinning media, so standard disk type type storage. In one case, it was disk storage backed by a Ceph environment. In the other case, it was local storage provided directly to the VMs through this pinning concept. That I thought was really interesting. So if you're actually looking at Hadoop, that session was, I think, an important one to understand how to get the best performance out of your system environment. So that was the biggest takeaway from that one. Earlier in the day, I hosted or moderated a panel specifically looking at the platform as a service market that is growing up. So this is things like the Pivotal Cloud Foundry environments, or the OpenShift environments, the service provider versions of that. Usually people talk about like Heroku as a PaaS. But it was really interesting because the first question I asked was, "What is a PaaS? What does this really mean to the panelists?" And we had both systems vendors, sort of infrastructure systems vendors. We had a VP from SUSE. We had an engineer from a large company that just supports application deployments, their internal application deployments. So basically, a customer of this, an operations customer, and we had an engineer from Pivotal as well. These folks all had a different take on what a platform meant, but in the end, I think Rob Hirschfeld sort of mentioned it best. He said a platform is really an abstraction from infrastructure for developers that want to see as little of the infrastructure as possible. So I thought that was a really great way of describing it. In the end, I think we probably, to a certain extent, agreed to disagree on some points. But to me, the biggest takeaway was that you're probably never going to get away from an OpenStack plus other tools market, whether you actually do something like deploy Cloud Foundry on top of OpenStack, or deploy Cloud Foundry directly to bare metal, or Kubernetes directly to bare metal, and a separate OpenStack environment. You're probably going to end up with multiple tools of that nature coming together to build your systems environment, and that's the real benefit that I think everybody agreed was right. The one engineer from Ancestry.com, he actually had focused on deploying Kubernetes, and they actually do deploy Kubernetes on OpenStack, but that's only for their dev environments. When they get into production, they go directly to bare metal. And some of the services, to me, some of the classic platform services, which were things like database components to their services, they currently have completely segregated. Whereas others were looking at, well, if you have Kubernetes, you can run databases within Kubernetes, but they didn't feel that the persistent storage was quite ready yet. So some of this is the earliness of the change in the platform space. Some of it is, there are certainly things that you could do by deploying on top of OpenStack and leveraging that, but they may not be the most appropriate solution. So in the end, I think that the panel was really interesting because it talked about a number of these different topics and a number of the different issues that people see as they're trying to make up their mind about what cloud tools and how they need to come together, what's really important to you in terms of the business drivers for cloud. And at the same time, the technology choices really sort of fall out of that. And again, from my perspective, that is really the key. I think it's really important to really understand what your business drivers are, how your development staff or infrastructure engineering actually use these different tools and enable these different tools. Once you understand that, then you can go forward and actually decide what to deploy and how to deploy it. But if you go backwards and just decide, well, we need a PaaS, or we need an IaaS cloud-based system, or we need hybrid cloud, without understanding how those applications are going to be integrated, how your development or third-party tools are going to use those infrastructure resources, you're really wasting your time. So a fantastic little conference, OpenStack Days Mountain West. Look for it again next year. I'm sure that they will do another one. I highly recommend it, and look forward to talking to you again very soon about all these sorts of topics.